You sit there, don't you? Trapped inside that storm in your head, thinking it's all just noise. But it's not. That noise is a symphony, a cruel, twisted symphony, but yours nonetheless. Every echo, every whisper, every scream bouncing off the walls of your mind, it's not chaos. That's your power clawing to get out. And yet here you are, smothering it, pretending it's weakness, pretending you're better off calm and collected while the storm inside you rots. Let me tell you something, people love a puppet. They adore a broken toy that still dances when they pull the strings. That's what they want from you, a show. A beautiful, tragic display of your suffering. They want you to bleed in silence, to cry without sound, to break without shattering. But you're not their entertainment. You're not a character in their story. They want you weak because it makes them feel strong. They want you silent because your voice might just shake the very foundation of their fragile little world. But you're not weak, are you? Number, you're just waiting. Waiting for a reason, waiting for a spark. But here's the secret. There is no spark. There is no grand moment where the pain stops and the light pours in. There's just you, standing in the middle of the wreckage, deciding whether to let the fire consume you or whether to become the damn flame yourself. You think holding on to the pain keeps you connected to the people who hurt you. You think if you carry the weight of their betrayal, it somehow means you still matter to them. But the truth, the ugly, bitter truth, is that they've long since moved on. They've wiped their hands clean of you, walked away without a second glance, and you're the one left choking on the dust they kicked up. And here's the kicker. They're not haunted by what they did to you. Number, they're haunted by the moment you finally stop caring, the moment you cut the string and watch them dangle. Because silence is a weapon sharper than any word you could ever speak. People expect noise, they expect anger, tears, a dramatic confrontation. But when you go quiet, truly, utterly quiet, that's when they start to unravel. Their minds will turn against them, crafting stories, imagining your revenge, fearing your next move. And that fear, that's power, that's control. That's the moment you stop being the victim and start being the ghost they can't shake. And let's be honest, they never thought you'd get back up. They counted on you staying down, drowning in the weight of what they did, hoping you'd shatter and never rebuild. Because the broken version of you, that was easy to manipulate. That was the version of you they could own. But the version of you that's coming, the one made of scar tissue and spite, that's the one they fear. They wanted you to stay soft, pliable, easy to mold. But you're not soft anymore. You're steel wrapped in fire. You have to stop waiting for closure. It's not coming. They're not sorry. They're not losing sleep over what they did. Hell, they're probably out there laughing, living, breathing, without a single thought of you. And every time you sit there, replaying the past, hoping for a different ending, you're giving them exactly what they want. They don't need to hurt you again, you're doing it for them, over and over, every time you let their memory choke you. So what do? you stop. You stop explaining yourself. You stop looking for answers. You stop waiting for an apology that's never coming. You cut the cord. You let their silence be met with yours. And when they finally notice, when they realize you're not there to absorb their cruelty anymore, that's when the real fun begins. Because nothing haunts a person more than the one they thought they broke, walking away without a sound. You see, your pain doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. Every scar they left is a weapon. Every tear they forced from you is a blade. You're not soft, you're sharpened. Every lie they told you, every betrayal, every time they made you feel small, those are the fires that forged you. They thought they were breaking you, but all they did was temper the steel. And now you stand. Not because it's easy, not because the pain has disappeared, but because staying down is no longer an option. You rise, not for them, not to prove them wrong, but because you refuse to be the ghost they hoped you'd become. You rise because the version of you they tried to destroy doesn't exist anymore. You're something else now, something colder, sharper, untouchable. And the best part, they'll never see it coming. One day, when they think you're long gone, when they believe they've won, they'll catch a glimpse of you. Not the broken you they left behind, but the version of you they never thought possible. Stronger, fiercer, unstoppable. And in that moment, they'll realize something that will haunt them more than anything else. They didn't break you, they built you. So let them talk, let them wonder, let them drown in the silence you leave behind. Because while they're busy trying to figure out where you went, you'll be too far ahead for them to ever reach you again. And that's the sweetest revenge of all. But here's the thing about silence, it doesn't just haunt them. It transforms you. Because the moment you stop begging for answers, stop clawing at the past for a scrap of meaning, you realize something terrifying and beautiful. You were never powerless. They never had control. They only ever had what you gave them, your attention, your pain, your reaction. And the second you stop feeding the beast, it starves. They thought they were gods in your story, didn't they? Thought their words were law, their actions the final chapter. But what happens when you rip the pen out of their hands? What happens when you stop writing them into every page of your life? They become irrelevant, background noise, shadows where once they loomed like mountains. And that's what they fear the most, not your anger, not your revenge, but your indifference. Because anger means you still care. It means they still have real estate in your mind. It means they still matter. But indifference, that's the final nail in their coffin. That's you erasing their name from the script. You don't flinch at their memory. You don't tremble at the sound of their voice. You don't break when their ghost drifts past your thoughts. You let it pass like smoke through your fingers, untouchable, irrelevant, gone. And when they realize they no longer have a seat at your table, that's when they spiral. They'll test the waters a text, a casual, How have you been? Not because they miss you, not because they care, but because they want to know if they still have a grip on you. They want to see if you'll crack, if that old version of you, the one who would have responded in a heartbeat, still exists. But you don't answer. You don't engage. You don't feed their hunger for relevance. You let them wonder, and wonder turns to doubt. Doubt turns to panic, and panic turns to regret. Because now they see it, you're not playing the game anymore. Hell, you flipped the board and walked away. And nothing drives a person more insane than realizing they lost their control, not because you fought back, not because you screamed and cried, but because you simply stopped caring. That silence becomes a mirror. Every time they reach for you and grab nothing but air, they're forced to face themselves. And trust me, most people can't handle their own reflection. Without you there to absorb their cruelty, they're left with the weight of their own emptiness, their own flaws, their own failures. And you just keep walking. Not because it doesn't hurt. Oh, it still hurts. But because you've learned something they never will. Pain isn't the end of the story. It's the prologue. The version of you they tried to break was never the final draft. It was a rough sketch, a draft full of weak lines and unfinished sentences. But now you're the author. You're writing the story on your own terms. And the version of you standing in the aftermath, scarred, silent, and stronger, that's the version they never expected. You are not the person they betrayed. That version of you died the moment they walked away. What stands now is something darker, something wiser, not bitter, but sharpened. And when they finally realize the door to you is closed, forever not locked, not cracked open, but sealed shut, that's when they crumble. Because for the first time, they're not haunted by what they did to you, they're haunted by the fact that it didn't destroy you. And that's the most beautiful revenge of all. You ever notice how quiet it gets when they realize you're gone? Not just physically, no, that's too simple, but when they finally grasp that you've left their orbit entirely. It's not the silence of an empty room. It's the silence of a severed connection, the kind that hums with absence. Because at first they don't feel it. They go about their lives, smiling, laughing, thinking they got away clean. They don't notice the void, not immediately. But voids have weight. Absence has gravity. And the longer you're gone, the heavier it gets. At first, they expect you to orbit back, a message here, a slip up there. They wait for the version of you who once clung to their every word, the one who broke themselves into pieces just to fit the shape they wanted. They expect you to slip, to cave, to fold beneath the weight of their absence. But days pass, weeks, and there's nothing. That's when it starts to itch. A casual check of your social media. Oh, they're watching. Don't doubt that for a second. A quick scroll through your life, hoping to see cracks, hoping to find hints that you're still caught in their web. But there's nothing. No sad quotes. No cryptic posts. Just silence. And that silence, it's deafening. Because people like them don't fear losing you. They fear losing the version of you they controlled. They fear losing the emotional puppet they could dance around. When they realize you've severed the strings, when they grasp that you're not just taking space, but burning the bridge entirely, it becomes a nightmare they can't wake up from. But here's the part they really can't stomach. You're not just gone, you're thriving. Oh, you might still be bleeding inside. The wounds might still be fresh beneath the surface, but they don't see that. All they see is your forward momentum. Every step you take without them, every day you live without their name echoing in your head that's a knife, twisting deeper than any words you could ever throw at them. Because they weren't prepared for this. They weren't prepared for you to rise without needing to scream about it. They expected a storm, a dramatic exit, a bitter tirade, something they could point at and say, "See, they're still broken over me." But you gave them nothing. And now they're left in a spiral of their own making. They'll tell themselves lies to cope. Oh, they're just pretending. They still care deep down. They'll come back eventually. But silence doesn't lie. Your absence speaks louder than their justifications ever will. And you keep moving. Not because you want to hurt them, no, that's the old you talking, but because standing still was never an option. They want you frozen in place, forever mourning their betrayal, stuck in an endless loop of replaying the moment they turned their back on you. But you've stopped replaying the scene. You realize something powerful. Closure isn't something they give you, it's something you carve out of the silence they left behind. There's a brutal kind of freedom in realizing you don't need an apology to heal, that you don't need them to acknowledge the pain they caused to move forward. Because their guilt or lack of it has nothing to do with your healing. You stopped waiting for the ghost of their remorse to show up at your door. And that's when you became untouchable. Because while they sit there, circling the drain of their own fear and regret, you've become a closed book, not locked, not hidden, but simply finished. And nothing breaks a person more than realizing the story they thought they were the villain in has already ended without them. There's something about being forgotten that gnaws at people. Not the kind of forgetting where they simply lose track of you, no, that's too easy. It's the forgetting where they realize they no longer live rent-free in your mind. That's what unravels them. Because at first they still feel important. Even when you walk away, they convince themselves you're still tangled up in them, that somewhere behind closed doors, you're pacing the floor, checking your phone, replaying every word they ever said. They like to think they're the sun, and you're just a lost planet still circling in the dark. But then time stretches. Days slip into weeks, weeks into months, and there's no pole, no orbit. And that's when the panic sets in. See, they don't fear losing you, they fear losing the version of you they controlled. The one who crumbled at their silence. The one who would rush to explain yourself the moment they twisted the knife a little too deep. They were never afraid of your love. They were afraid of your because indifference means they never really mattered. Not in the way they thought. It means they weren't as powerful as they believed. When they realize you're not thinking about them, not plotting revenge, not waiting for closure, they're left standing in an empty space with nothing but their own reflection. And most people can't handle that. They need you to react because your reaction validates their importance. If you scream, if you cry, if you rage, it confirms they had power over you. Even your anger feeds them. But silence starves them. And that's the part they didn't plan for, the version of you that learned to rise without making a sound. They need to feel like the puppet master, tugging at strings, watching you dance. But now there are no strings. There's just an empty stage, and they're standing there alone, grasping at air. Because here's the raw truth they expected to break you. They counted on you spiraling, on you dragging their name through the mud, on you publicly coming undone. That would have let them play the victim, the "look how crazy they are" card. But when you simply vanished, when you disappeared without a sound, without a word, they lost control of the narrative. And people like them, they need control. They need to feel like the puppet master, tugging at strings, watching you dance. But now there are no strings. There's just an empty stage, and they're standing there alone, grasping at air. They'll poke at you, maybe a text, a random like on your post, some flimsy excuse to remind you they exist. Not because they miss you, don't fool yourself, but because they need proof you still feel something. But you don't bite. And that silence doesn't just unsettle them, it eats them alive. Because now they have to face something darker, the idea that they never really mattered at all. That maybe, just maybe, you were never as lost without them as they hoped. That their absence didn't destroy you, it freed you. And when they realize they've been talking to a ghost, a version of you they can no longer touch, no longer influence, that's when the fear kicks in. Because there's no greater nightmare for someone who once thought they controlled you than realizing they've become completely irrelevant in your story. And you keep writing without ever once mentioning their name. The worst thing you ever did to them wasn't walking away. It was learning how to exist without them. At first, they didn't believe it. People like that never do. They think they're a fixed point in your life. An unshakable pillar that no matter how far you drift, you'll always come back, orbiting the memory of what they were to you. They don't see you as a person. They see you as a reflection of their own ego. As long as you're reacting, they're relevant. As long as you're hurting, they're important. But then something happens, something they didn't predict. Silence. Not the temporary silence of a heated argument, Not the performative silence meant to punish them, to bait them into chasing you. No, this is different. This is the kind of silence that feels permanent, unbothered, final, and at first, they mistake it for a game. They think you're just trying to prove a point, that you're waiting for them to reach out so you can have the last word. They tell themselves you're still simmering, still glued to your phone, still crafting unsent messages in your head. But the days pass, then the weeks, then the months. And the realization starts to gnaw at them, not all at once, but slowly, like a splinter in their mind. You're not coming back. Worse, you're not waiting for them. That's when the panic creeps in, because they expected noise. They expected a breakdown. They expected to still have hooks in you, pulling strings from a distance. They never feared losing you. They feared losing your pain, your reaction, your obsession. Because without that, who are they? Without you there, bleeding for their approval, they're left alone with themselves, and that's a mirror they can't bear to look into. You see, people like that don't build their identity on their own strength. They build it on the control they have over others. Their power doesn't come from within, it comes from how many people dance to their tune. The more you chased them, the more they mattered. The more you begged for answers, the more important they felt. But when you stopped playing the game, when you didn't just leave, you disappeared entirely, it broke them. Because now, there's nothing left for them to pull on. No puppet to manipulate, no heart to twist. Just an empty space where you used to stand. And that absence, it's louder than any word you could have ever said. Because silence is a mirror, and most people can't handle their own reflection. So they start grasping. Maybe they like an old photo, something subtle. Maybe they send a just checking in text, dripping with fake concern. Maybe they ask a mutual friend about you carefully planting the seed so it makes its way back to you. Not because they miss you, not because they regret what they did, but because they want proof. Proof that you're still affected, proof that they still have power. But you give them nothing. No reply, no reaction, no hint that their name even crosses your mind anymore. And that is what destroys them. Because it's not just that you're gone, it's that you've become untouchable. You're no longer the person they hurt. That version of you, the one who cried, who questioned, who waited, died the moment you chose yourself. What stands in your place now is someone they don't recognize, someone they can't manipulate, can't guilt, can't lure back into their toxic orbit. And for someone who feeds on control, that's a death sentence. Because now, they're forced to sit in the silence you left behind. No more games, no more battles, just a vast, hollow emptiness where their power used to be. And the longer you stay quiet, the louder it becomes for them. Because eventually, the truth starts whispering in their ear. You were never theirs to control. You were never truly broken, just bending under the weight of their lies. And now you're free. And the scariest thing you ever did was let them realize they no longer matter.